St. Patrick's Day. Woo! It's Metaphysical Meltdown, Rock and Roll Paranormal. Really happy to see you today. It's Sunday, a new, fresh, and juicy podcast for you. It's the 17th of March. So happy to be here. And I am extremely excited to welcome today's guest, who is Gail Alexander. We'll bring her on in just one moment. It will be about a 40-minute or so podcast. And I am not 100% who my guest is going to be next week. It's one of two people, so you'll have to watch the Facebook pages to see who that will be. But we are having a lot of fun bringing this information to you. I'm not going to do the Rock and Roll Farm Report where I talk about what's going on in the community right now. I will, though, as things come up. So thank you so much for tuning in, and there's not really too much to say that Gail didn't cover. You'll get used to me having a teeny little statement, an interview, and a teeny little exit at the end. That's how we're going to set it up. But today the show is all Gail. She's just awesome, and here she is. Hi, everybody. So happy to have with me today Gail Alexander. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
There's so many weird little techie glitches going on today, and so by magic of the podcast, we are running this fresh and juicy on Sunday, but today is Wednesday and there has been nothing but weird little glitches. So we're hoping to bring you our very best effort tonight. And so I am so excited to have you. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, a little about myself, the short abridged version. I was very psychic when I was little. Used to know when people were going to die and things like that. The famous story is I told my parents 2 weeks before my grandfather died that he was going to die of a massive coronary. And then my mom had a stillborn and they told us the baby was really sick in the hospital. And I said, why don't you just be honest? The baby's already transitioned and with God, why do you keep telling us it's sick in the hospital?
Wow. And how old are you?
5 or 6.
Oh my goodness.
So that started it. And then as most families, it wasn't necessarily appreciated. So I learned to shut it all off. And I had an eating disorder for a few years in order to shut it all off. And then it started to come back fully. Started when I was in grad school. My grandfather, who died when I was 5 or 6, my other grandfather was having a heart attack that day. And my grandfather, who died, who I couldn't remember what he looked like, was sitting across the room from me. So that's when it started to come back. And then in my 30s, I took an opening to intuition course. And that's when I got flooded. I saw my third eye reopen. I saw how the pyramids were built. I saw DNA. I saw kind of how the world was formed. And it just went on and on and on from there.
My gosh, that's great. I think that would be overwhelming.
Yeah, all of that is in my first book. I don't know how I know, I just know.
I love that title.
So that whole story of how that came to be is in the first book. Kind of my story of childhood, shutting everything down and everything coming back. Yeah. I believe that we all have gifts and abilities, and I believe that it's just a matter of some people may have more, but everybody has intuition. We just need to learn to connect to it again.
That is so true. Absolutely. That was another one of the glitches is when I went to get your book, of course, at Half Price Books. I didn't know what they might have. They had none. And then I went to look it up today and couldn't really get too much. So I know very little about you other than you are a friend of mine, which is how it all kind of works in this business. We're all interconnected. And why we have to be really good to one another because we all know each other.
We've all been through a few lifetimes together. Yes.
Exactly. Well, where do you live and what do you do right now?
What do I do right now? Well, I live in the Chicagoland area. By day, I'm a regular therapist. I treat people with addictions and trauma. And then in my free time, I create mandalas, or as I like to call them, energy portals. And I do readings. I've studied 8 different types of healing modalities, write books, speak. I do a variety of different things.
Wow, you are busy. Have you noticed, it's only been out about a week, but have you noticed anybody talking about the Michael Jackson, the new Neverland thing?
It's all over in my work. Everyone is talking about it.
That it is. Yeah, that was extremely hard to watch.
I haven't seen it yet, but I remember growing up hearing rumors. It was always kind of in the background. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I know a lot of people are saying it's conspiracy, it's this, it's that. They paid them to say those things. I think the truth always has a way of coming out, and sometimes it needs time to come out. People, we can look at the whole Me Too movement. I think that tides are turning and systems are changing, and the truth will always prevail.
Certainly, I know I didn't talk about the stuff that happened to me till I was 40 some. And I think until you feel safe enough, you don't feel safe enough.
Well, and let's be honest, most people who come back with gifts don't feel safe on Earth to begin with. Most of us don't even want to be here. I mean, we've signed up to be here and we have our missions and we want to complete the things we agreed to complete, but it's really hard to be in this 3D density, especially if you remember more, you have connections, or you work with spirit a lot. To then come back and be in this 3D denseness is really difficult.
It is. It is. I'd love to talk. I'd love to talk to you just a little bit about that energy stuff. You talked a little bit about your first experiences with your abilities, but how did your career in all of this begin?
So I was taking the opening to intuition course. It's a funny story. I usually fight against the things that I'm really meant to be doing, like most people. Even though I have all the gifts I have, I'm one who likes to drag my feet when I know I'm really supposed to do something. So the teacher said in the opening to intuition course, we're going to draw gift mandalas for each other. Yeah, I threw a temper tantrum for 45 minutes, held up the class. You can't make me draw. I don't want to do this.
My gosh.
There's no way I'm doing this. It just went on and on and on. And then, so we picked names and we did a meditation and everyone got a symbol. And the picture that I ended up drawing, I got somebody who had a lazy eye like me. And it was a very medical picture that they were supposed to put like on a record player and watch it go around to train their eye to do things. And he didn't like his picture at the time, which then stopped me from drawing for a while. But so that was in 2000. I must have like 5,000 images that I've created. They just come through. A lot of them at the beginning, I didn't know what I was drawing, are medical images. I was so connected to like DNA. I got all this information about where DNA or where genetic disorders come from and where they are in the DNA and what we need to develop. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with all this stuff. And I would see pictures of like sets of DNA running around and moving around. And I've never had more than bio 1. So I didn't know what any of this stuff. So I go to the teacher. I'm like, I keep seeing these gray tubes with purple balls on the end and they're forming all these patterns. What is this? She's like, DNA. I'm like, oh, well, here's everything it's doing.
Wow. Yeah. Sometimes I think it's better if we don't know, though, almost,
I had no connection to it. So I wasn't I was just getting the information because I didn't know what it was. So I just write it down and I wasn't judging it in any way because I had no idea what it was.
So what do you think about the new strands of DNA coming into the human body?
Well, I mean, I think that they're there. I think they're just getting activated. I think we all came back with all of them.
So they're there, but they're just coming on board. That's what I think.
As we move into higher and higher consciousness, I mean, we all probably have 124 strands of DNA. I don't know why I'm saying that number. 108, 124, somewhere in that vicinity. And they're all just coming online. The more you do the work and the more conscious you become, the more strands come online.
Well, now I know I'm going to say activate. Get in there and activate.
Well, be careful what you ask for because you also have to prepare your physical body to do the work. Otherwise, you're going to get sick.
Right.
Activate, and I think that's a lot of what spiritual sickness is, that sometimes people get, or dark night of the soul. I think as things activate and we're not necessarily ready for it, our physical bodies react to it.
Yes. So what do you think about some of the folks that are talking about this energy coming in this month in March? What do you think about that?
This energy that's coming in. I think we're in a period where it's all about moving past what we've all been stuck with, and we're still trying to create the version of humanity that we want to get to. I mean, we're past the point of blowing ourselves up. We're not going to do that. Depending, for some people, this will be hearsay, but we're the fifth incarnation of humans. We've blown ourselves up 4 other times, and it always starts in the Middle East, which is why that area is so charged. So this time we're gonna get it right. However, it's interesting to me that the movie Aquaman just came out, which is all about Atlantis and how they sank because of technology and they were pushing things too far. There has to be humanity with technology. And if we lose the humanity piece and we lose the heart piece, we're going to end up repeating that lesson again, too. I have no idea why we're talking about all this stuff, but it's interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think about this stuff all the time. I'm never not thinking about it. I think you're there too. Really,
I don't about it often, but I think about it a lot.
Yeah, and so I just wonder, people are talking about the event and the blast and all of that. So in the last couple of years, I've been thinking, is it inside us or outside us? And at this moment, I'm thinking it's both. And I also know that some of us have had some of it happen already. We've already had our blast of energy. But so many people are thinking that a lot more blast is coming and that a lot more people are waking up within like the next week or two.
Well, here's the thing. They've been working on the grid of the earth and they've been working on the grid above the earth. So as those change and as those different points of those grids light up, it's going to affect us all, especially with solar flares and all that. It's all connected. We don't think about it often, but it's really all connected. I know, like, if you ever watch Gaia TV, there's all the secret space program and all those things. It just depends what your belief system is and what you want to really buy into or not buy into. I've never been one to force people to have to think the way that I do. I'm comfortable in my own beliefs. Where other people fall is completely up to them.
Right. I watch South Park. I used to watch much TV. But I did
comedy.
But I did want to tell you, I sat in a group last year and saw a weaving of the group of us. Many been together probably a million times. The weaving of a web on the earth, in the sky, and in the galaxy. And I thought that was really interesting.
Well, I mean, even like we think about Jesus here, but then there's Maitreya, and then there's the cosmic Jesus. I mean, that line goes all the way up, and I think that oftentimes we don't think about those things. And sometimes I feel like I just have way too much information in my head. Sometimes I don't know what to do with all of it, so I just keep writing books.
Keep writing. Yeah, keep writing. Absolutely. I'd love to spend more time with you, certainly. But you're in Chicago. I've only been there once. Okay. So tell us really, I guess, about how did you decide to put the first book out? I know you have 3, right?
Well, the first book I ever wrote was with a coworker. It's on eating disorders because that's where my professional career has been. Although I did manage to sneak in the chakras at the end of that book. Not mainstream, but then the first book was, I don't know how I know, I just know. Then I put out a book of images to help heal humanity. So it's just mandalas. I didn't really put any words with it. I just wrote a meditation to use the images. Then the next one was mandalas of crystals and stones because I love crystals. And then I did a mandala coloring book. And then the newest book that just came out a couple weeks ago is I Still Know What I Know.
Oh my gosh. So how many is that?
5, I think. 5
Five.
or 6. Yeah,
And
somewhere in that.
there's more in there, I can tell.
It's going to be I Want to Forget Everything I Know.
Never happened.
I'm just
So
kidding.
when you write, are you listening to guidance all the time? Do you recognize that they're with you?
Yes, I am surrounded all the time. I am never alone. I've had teachers say to me, "What kind of an entourage do you have?" And they're like, "How do you deal with it?" And then I just say, "I don't know any different. It's been this way since I was little. I can't explain it." Like one of my favorite stories is I had a friend who had a brain tumor, and there was a group of 5 of us, and 4 of us had all learned how to read the Akashic records. So we were going to do this healing on her, and I did not want it to be me. So we're sitting there, we open the records, and I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting for one of the other people, and I'm sitting there, and finally my mouth starts moving, and it's like, "May I approach your head?" And then they froze my body. They dropped my body temperature like 20 degrees to freeze the tumor.
Oh my gosh.
And then it took like 3 hours to get my body temperature back up to normal. Yeah. So
Wow.
I've had, like when I used to do a lot of healing work with people, I would see them laying on a CAT scan table. And then wherever the issues are would light up, and I would literally see their body light up where the problems were.
Oh, that's similar to me.
Yeah. So
That is similar. Yeah, but the beings that surround us, they are so real to us. They are our best friends.
hmm I actually get along better with them than humans. But yeah.
And they're funny.
I have this thing, my friends think it's hysterical. I call it the metaphysical jukebox. So, like, if someone's really having a problem or an issue, they'll start singing choruses of songs in my head to tell people. So they'll just sing the chorus, and it's just really funny. Like, one of their favorite songs when I'm really struggling is they like to sing the Creed song, "Can You Take Me Higher?"
Oh.
When I was having trouble being grounded, they would sing the Glades plug it in commercial to remind me.
I'm not going to forget that. Oh my goodness. That's really good. Yeah. Well, it's what I tell people is if your guidance isn't funny and 100% for you, it's probably not who you think it is.
Yeah, so it's funny when it turns on because then it stays on for like hours and it just keeps going and going and going. But yeah, one of their favorites is "You Light Up My Life." They like to sing the chorus of that every now and then. And sometimes they'll sing that spinning wheel song, "What Goes Up Must Come Down Spinning Wheel."
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's just
70s.
depending. When I was leaving a job, and it was a really unhealthy thing for me, and so they were singing the Europe song. It's the final countdown.
Oh, so you knew.
So like everywhere I went, like whenever I was quiet at work or I'd go to the bathroom, they'd start singing that in my head. I'm like, okay, I understand.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
and they have such beautiful energy and are so. I have a guide that is so energetic. She's like, caffeinated. She's so energetic. So let's see. I find your discs really fabulous. Could you kind of show that so people can see?
I don't know if I have any on my desk. It's funny, I don't like keep some of my stuff out. I have everybody else's stuff out. Let's see.
The thing on your neck, though.
Oh, yeah, this is one of the Oregon pendants. I work in conjunction with a guy in Croatia, and then here's the back.
Right. Oh, that is so pretty.
So this is my image of black tourmaline for negativity, and then he puts other crystals in it, but when I had him made it for me, it just has the copper, gold, silver, black tourmaline, and selenite. So to balance like negativity and pure white light.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So, and if anyone's interested in these, you have to go through him, and he's in Croatia, and his website is cosmic-energy.org. He also does amazing ones of his own, but
Okay.
some joint ones with some of my images in them. So when you look through the pendants, mine have my signature next to it, so you can tell which ones are mine.
So pendants, but you also have just the discs to put out for different energy.
Yeah, I don't have one. It's so funny that I don't have any out here right now. So I can't really show you because I don't have one.
That's okay, but it's kind of like what you're showing on the front part.
Yeah,
Though.
they're like
Those are beautiful.
they're 3-inch discs, and they have my mandalas in them. So it's a special film that I print the image on. It's between two pieces of glass and then has copper around it, or sometimes silver.
Okay.
With silver around them.
Okay. And how do people find you, though?
I like to stay hidden. No. My website is Gail, Gail-Alexander.com.
Okay. So, but I have a couple more things to say. And then I want you to say anything else you'd like to bring up or talk about. So the Akashic records really interest me.
Okay.
I learned to speak to the angel of the Akashic records. And how do you get in there? How do you see it?
Well, I always am in the Akashic records anyway. But I actually see like the lords of the Akashic records. Like the first class I ever took on the Akashic records, I'm saying to the teacher, there's all these like knights that look like they're like from Arthurian times. And then there's this huge white building that looks like a library. And then there's rooms in there where you can take the books down. And like I was describing it in great detail. And then I've taken some other classes with some other teachers. And like whenever I open the records, the teacher is always like, "Where are you?" I have never been in this section of the records before. I'm like, it's the nosebleed section. But they just take me so high that, but when I'm doing readings and stuff, I'm gathering, I'm mostly always in the records because people ask me questions. I can tell you about your past lives. I'm a medium. I can talk to people who've transitioned. I can do medical intuition. I have had a lot of trouble with classes and teachers because they get very threatened by me. They're like, "Why are you in my class?" And I'm like, "I'm learning." And they're like, "You already know how to do all this stuff." So I've had a lot of bad experiences with teachers, but that's just because of that was my lesson that I really didn't need to take classes. I actually needed to teach. And then I just kept trying to take classes. And they're like, "No, you know how to do all this stuff. It's time for you to put yourself out there."
Do you teach classes?
I've taught a lot of mandala classes and getting people to create their own. I'm toying with the idea of teaching like my own version of opening to intuition. We'll see. I don't know. Everyone keeps asking me, so eventually I guess I will.
So you said that you've done psychic surgery before.
Yes. One of the teachers I had, she had just come back from study. That's a funny story. Studying with John of God. And this was the first week of opening to intuition class. This all happened within like 3 days.
Oh, wow.
I didn't sleep, but this all happened in like 3 days. So she's like, "We're going to do the healings like they did at the Casa." So the people in the class were sitting like in a meditation room. And then one by one, she called people into the healing room where her and her assistants were in the healing room. So I got called in first. She's like, "You're getting called in first because you're the most skeptical." So I get called in, they do this healing. I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And then I go back and sit down in the meditation room again. And then towards the end, I don't know how long it was. I was out in the ethers somewhere. And I get tapped on the shoulder and she's like, "I need you to come back in the healing room." And I'm like, "Okay." And she looks at me and she's like, "So-and-so needs a healing. You're going to do it." I'm like, "Are you out of your mind? This is my second day of class. I am not doing a healing on anyone." And she's like, no, just trust yourself. You know what to do. Just do the healing. I'm like, no. Again, I'm really good with jumping, doing it. So I ended up doing the healing on the person, but yeah, it was weird. So, and yeah. So then she did that for a while. So for a couple of years, I was doing like healing Sundays once a month. And I was always in the healing room, and I was always the one doing the surgeries. At one point, I saw white light shoot out of my hands and just a bunch of different stuff.
So, did you meet John of God?
No. She used to go a lot, and I can buy locate. So she says to me when she got back, she's like, why didn't you tell me you were going? I would have gotten you a room. I'm like, I didn't physically go, but I could explain everything, the whole compound, everything that went on there, but I was never physically there. I would just meditate and I would go.
And learn while you were there. Oh, okay. Wow. I know that the human being has so many possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to be open enough to allow it to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm working on that piece. Sometimes my humanness gets in the way.
You have such beautiful light, golden light around you, and so many people behind you. Just movement I can sense. So your team is certainly there.
Oh,
And
I'm
do
never
you
alone.
no. And so do you find that you work with all groups? Do you work with mainly galactics, angelics, or who do you work with? I know that's a really personal question. That's almost as much as saying, are you a Republican or a Democrat? I mean, people just don't want to talk about that.
When I was opening to intuition course, the first night we were there was a fire outside. And that was when I had the first experience. There was this beautiful golden light that went all the way around my head, and it was Mother Mary. And then whenever I would look in the fire, Jesus was there. Now, I grew up Jewish, so this was really weird for me that the first two people that came were Mother Mary and Jesus. And I'm like, what's a nice Jewish girl from Skokie doing seeing Jesus all the time? But for like the next 3 years, he was with me everywhere I went. Like I closed my eyes and he was with me. And so he was the first kind of guide that I worked with. At different times, I worked with all 12 of the Ascended Masters. I work a lot with Palladians and Arcturians and Syrians. And one of the cool things, and there's a little bit of an argument that I've had with people, is I think the dolphins are the Palladians that were left here to help us. And then I think the whales are Syrians and Arcturians. So I've had mostly Arcturians, but there are some Syrian energy in there, which is all fifth level, fifth dimensional, which is all about living from the heart. So when crises happen in the world, you hear about whales breaching on, shores or dolphins and things. It's messages for us that we need to really think about what we're doing and opening our hearts and living from that space, which terrifies people. Because if you really live from your heart, you can't have a lot of secrets. And our society is about keeping a lot of things hidden. And, people are uncomfortable when people know too much about each other. So we're in for quite a shock because that's the direction we're going. And if you look at the younger generation, they're all okay with that.
Yes, absolutely. It just makes me happy to work with, especially the little ones. They're just really fabulous to work with. I know I'm working on that clearing the mind thing so that people don't hear all my swear words all the time,
I think it's funny.
I think most things are funny, but there are a lot of people around now that are actually telepaths, that you can really hear, I've got a few friends of those.
But it makes people uncomfortable.
It does. And I asked that question of somebody the other day. I said, how do you do with it? How do you do with that? And she said, grace is what she says.
I have a friend, she's since passed away, but she had to have, I think it was hip replacement surgery. And she didn't like what they were serving for dinner. And she knew I was telepathic. So it started at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon that she telepathically was sending me all these messages to get me to go over there. So finally I showed up at 4:30. I'm like, what? She's like, I don't like what they're serving for dinner. Will you go out and get me something?
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
called me on the phone.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but it's fun to experiment like that because I did that. I think it was Sunday, and I said to one of my very best friends in my life, I said, "I need you." And it took a couple hours, but sure enough, she called me.
People get freaked out because they're like, I was just thinking about you, or I was just picking up the phone to call you. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people have that little piece. They know what's, that kind of thing. But it's even more so if you can do that next step and then, oh my goodness, how it's really going to be, like some of what the little kids have. It's pretty fascinating. So tell me, do you have any burning questions or things on your mind that you want to say?
Do I have any burning questions?
Not that I can answer, but I'm just anything you'd like to say.
Myself, I think so much of everybody's journey is really personal. And part of my journey is I know I'm here for humanity. And I know at some point my life won't really belong to me. Everything that I can do kind of belongs to the world. I'm just not quite ready to make that leap yet.
Oh, that is so beautiful. That makes my heart just get all juicy. It really does, though. It's true.
Hmm.
It is very true. That's what we're here for, I believe, is to serve. Absolutely. But not more than we can physically and mentally give. That's where the line is being drawn right now, right? Don't you believe? I love that you balance your crazy with the therapist stuff, though. I love that. You had to do that.
all the clients eventually figure out that I'm fairly intuitive. Like, how do you always know where we're going before we get there?
And then
So,
you tell them. Do you tell them?
sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like I had a coworker said to me, because sometimes like after 20 minutes, I've gotten to everything they need to work on. I'm like, how do people stretch sessions out to like an hour? Because for me, it's just everything comes so quickly. It's like boom, 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 boom. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. Sometimes I have a hard time slowing things down. So like when people have readings for me, I'm like, really just pay for half an hour because you're gonna get everything you need in a half an hour.
That speaks to your ethics too, though, really. But I have had people say, "Oh my goodness, I chewed on that for a year in therapy, and we just fixed that in an hour, whatever." So I just want to put it out there. Seriously, energy work can help so much if you really have even something you think is awfully big.
And I often, depending on what groups I'm doing and what trauma we're talking about, I will oftentimes talk about chakras or ask them what color they hate or what color they really like. And then I'll explain what that area does and why they need to work with that color, what they need to do with it. So I've learned to weave it in a little bit in traditional therapy. But, I work for an organization, so there's only so much that I can do. I can do a little bit more than when I worked for a Catholic hospital, but but it's just such a part of who I am.
Yes, you've got that loving heart. Oh my gosh, this has been just remarkable, and I thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Can you say your name again and tell them your info?
Okay. My name is Gail Alexander. You can find me at gail-alexander.com, or my Facebook professional page is Gail Alexander Energy Mandalas, where I post all the pictures that when an event happens in the world, I create a mandala and I just post those and give them away. Or if there's one that I drew that I really wanted to share with the world, so there's probably like hundreds of them on my professional page if anyone wants to see them. I draw custom mandalas for people. They can just contact me, and what I do is I create comes 11 by 14 matted, and I write a channeled message that goes with it. I do Akashic record readings, I do straight intuitive readings, I do some medical intuition, do some mediumship, speaking, Did I leave anything out? I think that's about everything.
That's a lot, but it made me remember my question.
Okay.
So many people have been triggered by the documentary.
Hmm.
What advice would you give people?
I think if you have a really strong visceral reaction to the Michael Jackson documentary, is that probably because in your consciousness, something along the line in this lifetime or a past lifetime, you're relating to what's happening. So just have compassion with yourself. There's a reason that all of that is coming up now and why it needs to get healed in consciousness and consciousness for everybody. So family karma, all kinds of that stuff. It's in family lines. It's everywhere. And I think the reason it's all coming up now is because it all needs to get healed and transmuted and released from our consciousness so that we can move forward as a humanity.
Yeah, and that's a big one too. The sexual abuse piece is huge. So thank you very much for your time tonight. Wasn't that awesome? We really had a great time today with Gail. And so I thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another fresh and juicy podcast. Please don't worry about the energy, accept. Just love yourself and put yourself first. It's time for resting and relaxing and giving back. So please be good to yourself this week, and I will see you next Sunday. Love you.